Hello and welcome to another dev diary for MEIOU Taxes. We had quite a slew of dev diaries very early on for MEIOU Taxes 3.0, and we saw some really exciting changes, and everything seemed to be running really well, and it felt like it was really close. And then it suddenly wasn't really close, and it's been like almost a year, and I've been really kind of worried and wanting access. But now we've got another dev diary. It's been a while since I posted one of these, but we have one today written by Farah Kahuna, and it is very good. And there is definitely a reason why it has been so long since we last had a dev diary, because a lot of things have changed. If you remember the previous dev diaries, a lot of it was about trade, and, well, trade's changed. There's a lot of changes to pretty much every system. So how about we just dive into the dev diary, let's read what they have to say, and I'm sure you're just going to be just as impressed as I am. So, welcome to the newest version of MEIOU Taxes. Still 3.0, even though he's called it 4.0, I guess, because there's been so many changes since the last time. But with enough work that you could think otherwise. 3.0 is the next version of MEIOU Taxes, and 3.0 is probably worth reintroducing, considering it's been so long since the last update on how its systems are progressing along. But do not despair, the second Great Dev Diary drought is over. Thank God for that. More videos for me to make. In response to this agonizing delay, we've prepared a hybrid dev diary. One part a trade production diary on the new systems, yes, the third iteration we've designed, and one part a summary of all the other new features which will receive their own dev diaries in the near future. I do hope you'll enjoy this Toblerone-sized dev diary, and it is Toblerone-sized before Toblerone screwed up and made everything small. It's a chunky dev diary. I like chunky dev diaries. Note, the first two sections, Trade and Production, are written personally by KJH, lead programmer on economy. So, first off with trade. How goods travel between different regions of the world has changed rather drastically as development progressed. That's because for a long while it was focused not on creating a fun system for players to interact with, but was focused on instead creating an elaborate and intricate simulation. You could barely interact with it, and it was so delicate and unstable that one wrong move and it fell apart like a house of cards. It was a mistake on my part which cost me both time and emotions. I will say this very much reads a bit like Victoria 2. That is an elaborate and intricate simulation, but it is also quite hands-off, and you can make it fall apart like a house of cards as well. So this could honestly be read as, like, if this was written by Chris King, who created the Victoria 2 economy, I would believe it. If you said this was written by him about Victoria 2, I'd believe it. So, although I do still find Victoria 2's economy fun, it is definitely not for everyone, and some people did find it not fun to interact with. Anyway, the main focus of new trade, therefore, was in addressing those problems I just pointed out. I made it so you can interact with it, and I made it resilient so that it can withstand a lot of abuse, which it is of course going to get. Let's start with sectors. A sector is a new addition to the new trade, which is basically just a set of provinces. It's defined as a set of provinces that are within the same trade node and share the same nationality. Sectors avoid the need for each province to conduct foreign trade on their own by grouping provinces together. After that, each sector can do trade with other sectors, which greatly reduces the number of possible trade links. A sector can trade with another sector when it has a trade link between the two. A trade link is created and maintained by states. It's created when there exists an unbroken chain of merchants placed in trade nodes between two sectors. This unbroken chain of merchants is actually really ingenious. It basically lets you do the Silk Road, in a way. If you have merchants placed in every node between Europe and China along the Silk Road, that's the Silk Road. That's exactly how it should work. If you want to be Portugal and go around the coast of Africa, you place merchants in every trade node between Portugal and, India or the Spice Islands or wherever you're trading from. And that really does work kind of nicely. And I very much like the idea that these sectors are based on the same nationality. I do think that is a good choice, and it stops it being just this huge trade node with all these potentially warring factions different nationalities, different cultures, different religions, all that. They're all a part of the same trade bloc. Doesn't really vibe very well. Though I will say, I hope, and I hoped this when I was playing MEIOU Taxes years ago, that culture is something that has been looked at. But let's continue on anyway. For example, suppose there exist 3 nodes, A, B, and C. There also exists 3 sectors, Z, Y, and X, where Z is in A, Y is in B, and X is in 3. If 3 nodes, A, B, and C, have vanilla trade connections that set up A to B to C, if owner of sector Z has placed a merchant in both A and B, then the trade link is formed between sectors Z and Y. If the owner of sector Z has placed merchants in all 3 nodes, A, B, and C, and it's also the owner of sector Y, the trade link is formed between sectors Z and X through sector Y. If the owner of sector Z has placed merchants in all 3 nodes but does not own any node B, then a trade link cannot be formed between sector Z and X. That's very, very wordy. Be nice if they had a picture to go along with that, but just to try and explain it with this map that we've got here. Imagine, if you will, that this here is A, this is B, and then this one here is C. There is a small sector, a sector, and a sector. You'd need to have a merchant in all 3 for this small sector and this small sector and this small sector to interact with each other in a trade link. But if you're missing out on this sector, then these 2 sectors here would not be able to trade with each other. Of course, you need to bear in mind the nationality need as well. But yeah, it sort of seems like trade is now flowing properly instead just this huge, big trading node that really has no relation from one side to the other of it. Yeah, I like the addition of sectors. I think it's a good change. This change, which puts the burden of opening and maintaining trade routes on the state, is a radical change from the previous model of provinces forming trade routes on their own. It meant that trade routes are now more dynamic and less stable. Therefore, I also had to change how trade itself is conducted once trade links are established. So in this example, Fars has merchants in 4 surrounding nodes. This empowers them to trade with all other sectors in those nodes if relations permit. Also worth noting is their home node does not need a merchant, providing a guarantee of inter-sector trade in a tag's home node. I wonder though, will you be able to put a merchant in your home node like in vanilla and just give you a little boost? I don't know if that's even possible anymore. Hopefully they go into that. Previous model worked on a concept of incremental optimization. Basically, it stored a variable whose value represented the total trade volume, and it incrementally optimized that value by either increasing or decreasing it based on the price differences of trading actors. The key problem of this model was it takes time for a sufficient trade volume to accumulate and therefore was unsuited for an environment where links were opened and closed in unpredictable fashion. So, the new model works based on making bids and then resolving those bids by matching them with offers. Basically, I made it so that sectors no longer care about their previous business transactions and made them buy and sell all they want with whomever they can find that gives a good deal. This model proved to be far more stable and resilient, as even if one trade route suddenly got closed, it could still try and find another sector to trade with. That is very nice. I do like that. I do like that very much, and I'm definitely going to need to spend quite a bit of time working my way around it, getting my hands on it, and really trying to understand it well. I think you can probably make quite a killing on trade if you manage it well. So, moving on, we've got this from the Gelariids. Stockpile of a sector is the same for all, yet it is distributed across the province for storage. This allows the capture of stockpiles and provides essential data integrity. I love that. I love that. If you see your enemy has a big stockpile of fuel, you can go and capture it, and then you can sell it instead of them. Oh, I love that. That is going to add a lot. Also, nice, funky new design of the UI. Looking forward to seeing what that's all about. So we've still got like food, salt, fiber, fuel, raw material, exotic goods, consumer products, military products, naval products. I do remember naval products being necessary for creating like naval ships, funnily enough. And military products was a part of the manpower change. But this is going back quite a while, and my memory is kind of terrible. But I do remember military products being very important when you're talking about your manpower. So being able to capture a stockpile of military product is probably going to be quite important. So production. If trade is about the movement of goods, production is how those goods are produced in the first place. Like trade, production too has seen a good amount of changes during its course of development. Key changes to note are changes in how industry is determined, how it shifts, and how it interacts with property. Industry size is a value that represents the sheer size of scale of a given industry. Before, it used to be directly tied to how much wealth is stored up in a given industry's treasury. If industry profits, then it will accumulate wealth and therefore increase in size. If the opposite, then the size would have decreased. The problem arose when the concept of separate treasuries for each industry became a goner. As part of a property rework, it was changed such that all industry profit and losses, rather than accumulating in their own separate treasuries, would just be fed back into property owners based on their property share. It was a nice change, but it meant a lot of production code and concepts had to be reworked. I tried many different things, but in the end concluded that just having industry size be its own thing, not tied to anything else, was the best approach. Now, industry size is not a composite or result of some other set of variables, it just stands at its own as its own thing. So while this is a little bit of a shame, because, you know, industries having their own sort of value and upgrading and degrading based on that specific industry sounds like a really cool change, I can imagine that comes with a price in performance, as that's a lot of data to track for every single province. So yeah, just having it all be consolidated into one industry size modifier is going to be a lot more beneficial for performance. And I think it is fair to say that performance is a big issue when it comes to MEIOU taxes. So yeah, having that is probably a good thing. It's a shame that it's necessary. We don't have quantum computers yet. Alright, an example of the free-flowing nature of size. Free-floating, sorry. Note the skill is a work in progress, stat, and thus set to 100 in the interregnum. Alright, so we've got size and throughput. Throughput, I imagine if you've got, is that like you're selling 100% of what you're creating? If so, this place is doing quite well for trade. Quite well indeed. That did lead to a new set of problems. If industry size is its own thing, then I had to rework how it changed based on market situations, as I can no longer just rely on change in treasury size as a result of profit and losses to automatically handle the industry size changes for me. I again tried many things and settled on a simple script. Basically, all industries now record any change in size that they made to themselves, and record how much change in profit has occurred after it made that change. Then they'll try and calculate how much they'll change in size and in what direction next year by simply multiplying previous size change with previous profit change. If one of the two was negative, then industry will try and shrink. If both were positive or if both were negative, then the industry will try to expand. That is a very simple way of doing it. So yeah, having it all in one simple little script. Good for performance, I assume. Alright, moving down. Luxury goods are highly profitable in 3.0, yet coexist alongside regular production. Note that profitability and values are still balanced ongoingly. Where are these? There you go. Luxury cloth is very, very valuable. Holy shit. 205 ducats of income. You spend 122, so you do get a good chunk of profitability. Urban goods still only 38.64% of the profits. But yeah, that elite profits there. Make a lot of money, not a whole lot of spending. Very nice. Oh, just all the numbers, especially considering the colors as well. Like, you can tell at a glance, you know, okay, if this was all in the same color, it'd be so unreadable. But this is really nice. It would be even better if it was all lined up perfectly. You just had the 3 columns. I wouldn't mind expanding the UI just a little bit so they'd all be in their own little columns. You know, that'd be cool too. So, property and infrastructure. To facilitate these new trade and production systems, we had to forego our old system of abstract property power and automatically calculated property shares. With this new model, we decided to work from a clean slate, moving away from simply having rural and urban property. Instead, there are real, discrete, buildable units of property that are owned by a given class. Property is not focused on progression, it is instead focused on supplying real estate for industry slots to utilize, working as a primary means to distribute wealth, and thus power dynamics in a province. Well, we need to redistribute the wealth and the power to the working class. Whatever. Yeah, moving on. That was a bad joke. Anyway, each of these property types are used by different industries and owned in different absolute amounts by a variety of classes, requiring unique values for construction and maintenance. Interesting. So it's going to cost more or less based on who owns it, I think. That's fairly cool. That is fairly cool indeed. I wonder as well, what is he hovering over to get this tooltip? Because right here it looks like he's just hovering over the name of the place, but then down here he's like hovering over in this area. I'm not sure where all these hoverings are going on, but I guess it's going to be interesting to find out and go and dig into this. I do like the UI. I do think it is very nice. Buildings and taxes. Oh, look at all these bloody UI buttons. It's fucking glorious. Lovely new artwork as well, I can tell. Progression instead falls largely upon the new infrastructure system, entirely divorced from the old. New infrastructure is based on a ranked system of progression, each rank providing increasing bonuses while requiring dynamically sized amounts of units to be constructed for each rank. The dynamic sizing allows larger provinces to have larger costs where appropriate, while also providing a way to increase maintenance accordingly as well. In a sense, a rank is a collection of these units, providing a means for partial progression towards the next improvement in a province. Amenities is essential for those aspiring for large, powerful cities. Outside of migration, it is the only other way to reduce the inherent difficulty of maintaining a positive growth rate for urban population. So, yeah, get your amenities in order. Definitely. Okay, trade nodes. Our new trade system left a fundamental issue, which is the balanced trade nodes of 2.5 would not fundamentally work due to the limited trade node connections inherent to it. In this sense, we made a conscious choice to forsake AI balance to an extent and instead focus on providing a larger number of merchants for a now larger, fully formed network of inter-node trade connections, providing complete functionality for trade with historical redrawn routes and an expanded node set. This includes major reworks to the nodes, much of Asia, and additional work in many other areas. Lots in China, as is expected, a bunch over the Himalayas with the Silk Road, Straits of Hormuz down at the bottom, Persia's still pretty chunky, Mesopotamia in its own thing. Interesting that Korea has a bunch of Japan. I guess this does help any kind of Japanese play. Key splits have occurred in China, Southeast Asia and Central Asia provide a rational trade range. Rational limits are to inter-provincial trade, reasonable competition and better flow between nodes. Let's have a look, see if there's any interesting routes. Where is Orissa's going? I think maybe Orissa's is right here. And it's only getting trade from Bengal, not from Delhi. And it's only sea-based trade going to Orissa. That's a bit weird, I think. And Ceylon is right there. Konkan looks like it's around here. And and Kutch looks like it's going to Konkan. Right, what's this little arrow here? Very interesting. Delhi can either go this way or this way, that makes sense. Having Delhi not able to trade into Kutch, or I think it's Gujarat node. I can't remember what the node is called in vanilla, but that was a real source of pain for me. Alright, So, classes. The bedrock of the 3.0 rework originally was a class system, providing discrete units of population focused on socio-economic differentiation, which including within rural and urban. Rurals were split into slaves, peasants, and freeholders, while urbans were split into slaves, residents, and artisans. Through the last 2 years of development, however, we've found that the greatest value of classes was in discrete economic units for the elites of society. Consolidating rural and urban classes back into united classes provided better results in our system, improved performance and understanding. The fundamental divisions, however, are now reflected through the systems developed in the last few months. For example, we've moved from a serfs class to a more multi-factored approach to distinguishing the well-being and freedom of peasants. Aspects like their property share, their freedom value, or the rights applying to them have all strong effects on the fulfillment and wealth, representing the intent of the divisions without the need for separate classes. So what kind of classes have we got now? We've got peasantry, the residents, nobles, burghers, and the clergy. Also demonstrates the new approach to modifiers and localization. Note that the dole is related to an interaction recently implemented, another example of work in progress. Okay. The dole, I don't know if it's the same thing, but in the UK at least, the dole is what you get if you are a job seeker's allowance from the government. That's the dole. Probably not the same here though. Just an interesting little tidbit. Alright, so you can see their subsistence, how much it costs to keep them subsisted. Probably not though, because peasantry is 0.1 and then the burghers are 0.021. Oh no, that's 0.021 thousand. This is 0.1 in general. Okay. And then the change is there as well. Migration. Their freedom value of 60%. Shockingly bad. It seems like only you have the freedom rank. Fair enough. We've got a literacy rank in there as well. That's pretty fucking cool. I like it. That's pretty awesome. So, the elites. While the foundation of 2.5 politics was the estate system, 3.0 replaces that with the elites, also known internally as power brokers. The elites are the local power brokers in a given province, with each holding power and loyalty, alongside all the data you'd expect from a class, including wealth. They may work in industries, own property, and extract earnings, and fund property and infrastructure. At their core, however, they are political entities and will strive to achieve a more favourable environment. So do we have still the situation where every single province is owned by an estate? Because the estate system has been replaced, so is that maybe a no? Has the estate system completely gone away, perhaps? I wouldn't mind if it did, because, I mean, the estate system in vanilla was kind of shit. And it was much better in MEIOU Taxes, but it's very involved. So, the local core data of elites, their power is not mutual, and not entirely dependent on their assets. Okie dokie. Elites have power, and it's not mutually exclusive between them. Power represents the influence of an elite in their given domain, such as the countryside for nobles, the towns and cities for burghers, or the entire province for the clergy. In the absence of another elite, they can encroach on the other domains and tax those within. Both the effects of elites, however, and how their resources are translated into power are shaped by national rights, requiring their influence to extend beyond provinces. One other entity seeks to manifest their power in all domains, and that's the state. Through state reach, representing the influence of a state in a given province, the state can enact the effects endowed by national rights, transform the effects of other elites in their given domains, and institute a new foundation of power that revolves around the state. All stats from all elites are summed up and displayed in a national UI, but their wealth, power, and influence is all fundamentally provincial. And here, familiar concepts including interactions and privilege return anew. Oh yay, to provide the means to change the power dynamic in the realm. So nobles, clergy, burghers, and bureaucrats, that's all the same as before, but yeah, it's, I guess, very much changed at the same time. Fair enough. Fair enough indeed. So this is the burghers. They've got loyalty of 50, power is 18%. Lots and lots of wealth and changing. I assume this is yearly change. Although with 20,000 ducats, maybe it is monthly. That is an awful lot of land. Sorry, an awful lot of wealth. Not so much land, but again, that's the burghers for you. And then lots of property. Very cool. And their power is going down very incrementally. I do like that. Being able to see exactly how much their power is changing. That's awesome. While their data is provincial, their national composite summarizes their position across the realm, while providing useful information to take into the process of interactions and privilege change. So, factions and authority. While the elites represent the power balance in the provinces, factions represent their influence specifically in the central governmental authority and their control over the government at large. These factions have relations within the state and can help or harm a given ruler depending on their alignment with the faction's given agenda. Allowing governmental influence to reach its natural state can allow powerful factions to provide the ruler with legitimacy and authority, while going against the status quo can provide the means for a new rise of new factions, facilitating reform and a new direction. In coexistence with this new system of governmental power is a return of executive authority for the old timers out there. Executive authority represents the real power of the central government, replacing the ruler-centric mana generation with a new hybrid value. Oh, they're doing it. They're doing it. They're changing mana. Oh, yes. Oh, Sorry, I may have, Let's just move on. Ruler mana is now a dual calculation of ruler authority limiting their influence to act, weighted against their own skill to contribute. Institutional authority provides an alternate means of generation, shifting the value towards a uniform, consistent mana generation that is less dependent on rulers, yes, while leaving less capacity for exceptional rulers to exert influence on the state. And while balancing these two is key, authority of any kind will be essential to avoiding a vacuum of power, widespread corruption, and an ineffective and inactive central governing authority. Alright, so this guy's a 5/5/5, he's got 66% authority, so he's then, I guess, a 4/4/4. How much mana are you going to end up getting? I guess it would be a 4/4/4. You'd expect it to be a bit different, though. Executive authority represents the potential power of the executive over the state and the ability to exert the power. Absolutist rule can empower strong leaders and unleash their potential, while strong institutions represent the rule, can help prevent a weak leader from unleashing instability and chaos. The capacity of the ruler to impact the realm is summed up as an average of ruler authority and inverse influential authority multiplied by centralization. Low ruler impact will mean a more reliable power outlet at the cost of multiplying the potential benefits of a strong ruler. So what I'm hoping for is that this just doesn't make rulers just objectively worse. Alright, actually no, it's not the 66% here. It's this impacted by ruler impact. So you've got to have ruler authority, institutional authority, and then your centralization is also taken into effect as well. Though the ruler is powerful and wise, the actual influence is constrained by institutions and the limits of their personal power. The realm is not the ruler, and executive authority is the means to normalize mana generation. It's going to take a little while of getting used to this system. Because what would be the case if we had a very weak ruler? Would you still be gaining more than just... would it be... Would the ruler impact of a 1/1/1 make it go up then? I would hope so. Because that would be a fairly interesting system. But again, I'm going to have to see what happens when you have a 1/1/1. The math isn't entirely clear to me just yet. So, rights. While privileges and the power dynamics of the elites provide both a path to alternate future, the core of the political progression lies within national rights, internally known as national reforms. The difference in rights between realms forms the core of differentiation in 3.0, shifting the realm in a given direction, usually towards what we today consider a modern state. Rights are a major shift in the powers provided to the elites, to the powers of the state and the framework that governs the economy. Reforming the rights of an entire nation can be a painful process for the unprepared. Even so, in 3.0, we've had less hard blocks on internal political action than before. You can reform an instability with a penalty, you can abuse the elites with the risk of rebellion. There's always risk, and the reward is partially subjective. Using the various means of interactions, bartering privileges, and laying the groundwork for reform can keep the realm marching onwards in the face of change without falling into instability and chaos. So, promoting the commoner bureaucrats here would increase the gravity of the nobles. Impact of the property share of the peasantry is no longer multiplied by noble power. Noble power, 2.5% of the noble power of resident income transferred to noble wealth. That transferred to noble wealth. Plus 50% autonomy from the nobles. That's pretty big. So what is the benefit here? I guess maybe it's just turning more of the peasantry into nobles to keep the nobles happier, but it's also going to give the nobles a lot of power. I'm not sure. Though a national right, the state can devolve further powers to the natural hierarchy of the nobles, expanding the effects of their influence, providing a bartering chip to potentially counter negative effects of other reforms. Yeah, it is. So it's just giving the nobles some stuff. Yeah, I think that's what that is. Okay. Manpower. One of the most essential changes of 3.0 is the levy system is now gone. Levies provided a means to represent the armies of the elites and the irregular nature of their forces. In practice, however, as the nobles' armies were hidden within the estate menu during peacetime, they removed one of the most important statistics of strength and power from the EU4 map. This removal left difficulties across all systems, from diplomacy and war to AI. 3.0 puts all armies back on the map without removing the essentials of levies. Loyalty and rights still play a major role in the recruitment and composition of your armies. Through a new system of tracking and scripts, manpower has also picked up an important feature. When men die in the battlefield, that now translates into real casualties in the provinces. Oh god, yes! That's what people have been asking for in like all of the games. Distributed based on each class's contribution to manpower in each province. War has never been as deadly as it is in 3.0. So while I do kind of miss the fact that, you know, you can't levy your nobles' armies during war, like, I thought that system worked really well. I mean, maybe I was missing something, clearly. But I really, really liked that system. And I'm kind of sad to see it go, honestly. I guess I just didn't see the difficulties. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm entirely in favor of this, but I do very much like this. Now, the best way to, I mean, if you have a stronger army and a stronger economy and all that, you can very much hurt your enemies, not only by sieging their land, but like battles will hurt their country as well, more than just in, oh, you have fewer troops now. It'll be oh, you have fewer people working in your provinces, less population, we're actually killing people. It just ties you more closely to your nation and what you're actually doing. I love that. For a mod named MEIOU Taxes, there hasn't been a lot of active taxing going on in older versions. In 3.0, tax is front and center feature and the core means to extract revenue, affecting population dynamics and balancing your revenue with the resources available from your people. Every province can have multiple distinct taxes at varying rates, each raising revenue within their own cost to your administration. Their cost is twofold. On one hand, the administrators have to be paid for their tax collection duties, while on the other hand, supporting the ongoing taxation efforts requires spending political resources, aka mana. Large states attempting to tax large portions of their population will suffer the burden of the strain of administration and will require political reform to handle the costs. Lovely. Alongside this tax model is a rework of local autonomy's effects and an expansion of corruption as a concept. Local autonomy has shifted from cancellation of state tax revenue to instead a metric of the difficulty of taxing a given province. As such, revenue can be found even in a 100% local autonomy province. Instead, local autonomy primarily affects the cost of tax and the power of elites and provincial corruption. Accordingly, corruption is now a local provincial version. That is the primary means with which the state can lose revenue to the local elites. Corruption at the local level is the elites co-opting the government in the province, reducing their tax rate while siphoning that which is collected. The bastards. On the other hand, state corruption is a faster change, more dependent on executive authority and more focused on Manicost and other factions within. So now we've got a bunch of these, like, tax laws. Example of tax in a system. Compared to loyalty-dependent obligations, the subsistence's excise is dependent on indirect tax bureaucracy. So, an excise on the consumption of substances taxes the value of exotics purchased within the realm, varying based on the consumption of various classes and the price of exotics. Alright. So, you're taxing your population, but you're also taxing trade goods, it seems, which is a very cool concept for sure. Interesting. Alright, moving on. This is a very long dev diary. Communication efficiency, always the bane of my MEIOU Taxes runs, and rivers. With all the new systems in place, we had a look at communication efficiency and the fundamental concept that grounds it. The core idea is to shift from a focus on speed as the base metric of governmental authority, and instead shift to a focus on capacity, which in itself has an element of speed. This allowed us to rebalance communication efficiency to act as a metric on the influence of a government can exert based on its distance to the given province, and better utilize the new systems of CE. CE has gained a new, more performant calculation method, of which the details can be shared in a future diary. In addition, CE has added river transport to its arsenal. Beautiful, it's been something I've been asking for a long time. Using per-province data on the presence of navigable rivers, and using a system of interlocking river segment IDs with joint points to connect rivers, we've created a map transport to act as the core gauge on the capacity and reach of a government in a given area. Oh nice, so we've got these rivers all like having really good CE. And like connecting rivers as well, so I imagine Russia's going to be a lot easier to govern because there's a lot of rivers there. That's really cool. Yeah, because if you were playing in China and you had your capital here, the CE out here would be absolutely shocking. And then you're as a player thinking, well, just send a boat up all the way through the... Is the Yangtze? Or is this the Yellow? I don't remember. Just send a fucking boat up there and that's your CE. But yeah, that was never possible before. But now it seems to be possible, which is very nice indeed. I like it. Showing the rivers in East Asia, coloured by ID. Rivers that seem separate are often joined using special flags. Lovely. So, idea groups. One of the strong points of MEIOU Taxes, in my opinion. With the new systems in place that now represent many concepts once outlined in our idea groups, a rethink of all ideas and their effects was necessary. Most ideas remain the same in concept or name, yet their content has mostly been reworked. Idea groups at their core now represent the effort the country is making to move towards a given direction. The absence of ideas does not denote the absence of its presence, and instead means the focus has been shifted elsewhere. This has empowered us to add idea groups as requirements for many reforms, providing a more immersive and challenging pathway to reform your nation in a given direction. Alright. Yeah, definitely changing that to needing certain idea groups to do reforms is a pretty good idea. It's sort of similar, I think, in the way that to take exploration, I mean, it still seems to be the same. To take exploration, you needed to first take naval, which was a little bit of an annoying one, honestly, because naval was never a group that I especially liked. So that is still there, but I suppose it's sort of the similar kind of concept. You need this before you can do this, because I mean, if you don't have the idea of this, why can you do this sort of thing? I suppose it makes sense in that way. An example of the idea groups rework, the old groups remain while their core is reworked entirely. So, national ideas. In addition to idea groups, we've undertaken an effort to rework all national ideas in the game, centered instead around culture instead of tags. This represents the past and characteristics of a given people, and its effects and the effects it has on them in 1356. We'll freely delve into per-culture idea sets where we desire and we feel it's appropriate, but by large, culture groups at the base division allows us to replace much of the national idea sets in as short a time as possible. It also allows us to spend time with new ideas that include proper 3.0 effects and thus integrate better with our systems. So, yeah, I guess, well, I was going to say France, but that's a pretty bad idea, because France is... They pretty much own their entire culture group plus an entire other culture group, because Northern and Southern French is split. I suppose Legacy of sort of makes more sense. Maybe. I'm not sure. I hope this doesn't result in a weakening of the flavor of different countries. It's sort of the same thing as what Imperator is sort of criticised for, as having less flavour between countries, and people point to EU4's national ideas as an example of how to do it better. I'm not sure about this. I'll have to dig into it and have a look myself. The Legacy of Your People is now the focus of new national ideas, also using all 7 slots for the new sets. So, now, institutions. With new systems, a familiar theme, come new institutions, with new concepts and a full invention and spread overhaul. Thank fuck. That was one of the big problems with 2.5, is institution spread was just... It was honestly kinda garbage. It was very difficult to get certain institutions, for example. So our new institutions at their core based around a new spread model that uses direct province borders and trade nodes. It also uses the 3.0 trade system to allow far and wide spread across great distances. It also includes a fully functioning invention system allowing a state around the world at any time, regardless of who else has it or who invented it, to create the facilitating conditions to invent the institution at their own area and enjoy its benefits. Lovely. Fantastic. So, in vanilla EU4, if colonialism spawns in fucking Japan or something, and you as Portugal kind of want it, you really had 2 options, and that is, go colonize and start the spread yourself. It's a pretty bad example for colonialism, but you could get it other ways. If something that you couldn't get dynamically, so not colonialism, you could develop for it. MEIOU Taxes you can't develop, so you needed another way of spawning an institution in an area. And yeah, being able to do that this way would be rather nice, very much so. Commercialization institution spread representing the beginning of the great divergence through commercial revolution. Alright. And last year, secret map mode for this diary might help explain something the perceptive may have noticed. I guess I'm not perceptive because I didn't notice it. So, my challenge for you, dear viewer, the fuck is this map mode then? I think it's got to be something to do with trade. We've got sort of a Silk Road thing going on. Damn and blast, what is this supposed to be? I really can't tell. Also, all of Africa being redacted is a bit suspect. But yeah, that is the MEIOU Taxes 3.0 Path to Modernity dev diary on all the different changes. And my challenge for everyone who has watched this far into the video is to guess what this map mode is. So, if you have an idea, put it in the comment section below, along with all of your thoughts on MEIOU Taxes 3.0, all the dev diary. If you've played MEIOU Taxes before, then do feel free to let me know, especially what your thoughts on the changes are. I am liking a lot of the things that I'm seeing, and then other things completely confuse me, and I'm going to have to look into them more when I play the game. So yeah, do leave your comments in the comment section below. Like the video if you liked it. MEIOU Taxes 3.0 will be on my channel when I have the ability to play it. So yeah, do look out for that. And yeah, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Yeah, MEIOU Taxes 3.0. It's looking fucking good.